GGG just dropped Path of Exile 2 update patch notes. And in one of these patch notes, there is actually a pretty large change that is going to affect basically every build and character that you choose to play. But there's one change in particular that's bringing up a under-discussed ascendancy that's going to bring it right up to being one of the more interesting classes and has a very unique change. So let's talk about what's going on. So at the bottom of the patch notes, there's these updates here in which they'll go through, and as they're going through the patch notes, they'll either rechange some wording to make it more clear, they'll actually change some of the numbers themselves. They're still sort of trying to do active balancing up to the last moment to make sure they have everything, and there's some unique changes, etc. in here, and that's all cool. But the one that I'm more interested in discussing here are the changes that came out last night. If you open this up, you're going to see here, there's continued improved sound effects. There's some changes to Whirlwind. It's half the time, 4 seconds instead of 8. But if you go here, the Witchhunter, this is where it gets interesting, okay? The Weapon Master Notable Passive Skill, which is the one that granted 20 extra weapon skill points. We'll talk about what those are in a moment in case you don't know. But now grants 100 passive skill points to become weapon set skill points. So let's just explain what those are for the people that don't know. So if you go here and you look, you're going to notice you have 24 weapon set skill points. And so what those actually do, they allow you to allocate different skill points for different weapon sets. So for instance, when you hit the X button here, you swap between this weapon and this weapon. And currently on the skills, how it works is you can actually assign, well, I want Spark to only work with this weapon set. I want Orb of Storms to be one that is auto-casted off, the second weapon set. So if I choose to use my Spark, it's going to swap automatically to the first one. And when I choose to use my Orb of Storms, it's going to swap to the second weapon. This way you can have maybe a fire staff or a lightning staff, just as a very generic example, and be able to utilize the weapon that's best for each of those. But also when you set this up, so let's say weapon set 1, I want to go this way on the tree, for instance, can apply there. And then weapon set 2, I actually want to go this way on the tree. And then what happens is, as you swap between these different weapons here, you actually are going to swap, you're going to swap which passive tree you're actually using. So you can see those ones get activated. You can swap back here. Now these ones are activated. So for that reason, you can kind of run a bit of two passive trees. But now because the Witchhunter in these patch notes are actually adding on 100 in addition to the ones you already have, that's 124 passive skill points. You can basically run two entire separate passive skill trees. Now, there are some limitations on this. One is keystones and jewel sockets can't be swapped around. If you got to be locked in and have a clear path to both of these. But I mean, you could absolutely, for instance, go one direction and grab totems on one and then have a setup for a weapon, if you're doing galvanic shards or something, a weapon setup for another castable. So you could have completely different passive trees for each one of your different skills. You got two basically full sets of this. But there's a further change that's actually even a larger deal that applies to all of the classes. Now, there's some other unique item changes in here. Like, for instance, this one's kind of cool. Ice Tomb now grants Code Thorns equal to 10 to 18% of your max mana. Helps out some of the Thorns people, for instance. And there's other item changes here as well. But if we go down to, where is it here? It's in the player changes. Here it is. Under user interface changes, actually added the option to assign your equipped weapons to both of your weapon sets instead of needing to use different items in each weapon set. This is the weapon locking tech that they were talking about earlier. So now, instead of me actually having to have two different weapons, let's say you have a really good mace or a really good bow or something, and you want to run two completely separate different trees using the Witchhunter or something like that, you can literally assign the same one, or you can have the same shield be in both of these. So you can use the same weapon with completely different trees in the circumstance of the Witchhunter, or for everybody else, this still applies for your 24 weapon skill points. I could use, let's say I want to use my rare weapon that's better as my one. I don't want to use this, and then I want to be able to have the +4 of all fire spells or whatever stats on there. That's something you're using, right? But now I can actually swap between all of these here using the weapon swap tech. And also, it's now instant. This is something they talked about previously, but weapon swaps, as we know in 0.3, are not only now is it buffed because you can use the same weapon of it, and not only does the Witchhunter have +100, but the weapon swapping between one set and another is something that happens completely instantly. You no longer are stuck behind an animation. So that's all super interesting, and compounding the fact that the Witchhunter now gets to kind of do two completely separate passive trees of 124 points. 100% there's going to be some interactions that are found because of this that are things that would not have been possible without that many skill points on the Witchhunter. I'm kind of curious to see which of these actually come out as either bugs or unintended interactions, whatever you want to call them. But this is just like a factual buff no matter what you roll. No matter what you roll now, if you get a really good weapon, you're not locked out of having to have different ones entirely. So this is just overall really good to know and is just a huge buff for any of your builds. Speaking of huge buffs for any of your builds, consider getting yourself a Starforge PC. That is right, the first original sponsor of the channel, the first one we've ever had, has been released a Path of Exile 2 Special Edition PC, as well as wall art and desk mats related to Path of Exile 2. Looks pretty good. I actually got one in person here that I showed off on the live stream. One of their better ones for sure. You got different, plates you can slide in depending upon what your theme of choice actually is there. And of course, you got the desk mats and wall art, etc. On top of that, I will be giving away one of these PCs during my subathon as one of our subathon goals. So maybe you can't afford one. You have a chance to try to win one. Granted, there's always thousands of people in these things, so good luck. But, we are actually giving away this as well as a whole bunch of desk mats and wall art and etc. Throughout the league launch. So that is something you can also keep your eye out for. So shout out to Starforge for not only sponsoring this channel, but being the very first original sponsor. I actually have a really good relationship with these guys. They're a fantastic company. They've done a lot for myself and the channel. And honestly, their PCs look pretty good too. So this is one of those sponsors which I really feel good about. So if you guys are interested in them, check them out. I'll have a link down below. PC looks pretty good in person as well. And I'll see you all tomorrow for the launch. Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific. That's 4 p.m. Eastern. See you there.